Hello and welcome to this video, which will be dedicated to the digitalization of Ukraine. To be clear, that's what let the Ukrainian army withstand the shock and strike Russia, both at the front and behind the lines. Digital technology enables Ukrainians to sustain their economy and persevere through power outages and shelter stays. And it's also what allows Ukrainian industry to keep operating despite the daily bombings. When you go to Ukraine, that's really something you notice every time. It feels like the country is ahead of us. Whether it's for coordinating small drone production units or simplifying administrative procedures. All right, let's get back to the conference. So how did digitalization save Ukraine? Hence the title, Digitalization or Death. So first of all, Ukraine, a country that's sometimes looked down on in Western Europe, like, oh, Eastern Europe, it's backward. In reality, they are way, way ahead of us. And when we talk to them about it, usually it's in the same way as it's hard to turn a very large company into a low-cost business. It's hard to turn an administration like France into a low-cost operation. And it's easier to start from scratch in the 90s by creating a system that's almost optimal. When digitalization accelerated in 2013, 2014, and 2015, we adopted these tools. You usually see it in daily life, like how we order drinks with ODU just outside. It's the first time I've seen this outside of Ukraine. But over there, being able to scan, choose from the menu, say what you want, or order and pay by yourself without needing a server, that's something that's normal. The quality of service in restaurants, you can have a server or handle things on your own, that's really something. In daily life, it's used a lot. You want to buy flowers in the subway? We transfer money from card number or to a phone number. It's the country that was the most digitalized in banking, the most advanced in that field as well. And it's something that, personally, when I was there for my studies, in 2023, I didn't expect to be surprised in that way. They're thinking, wow, this is really good. We're really behind on our side. And for them, actually, their administration started digitalizing very early for a lot of good reasons. To be more efficient, but also, for example, in the field of procurement, to avoid anything related to corruption. When renovating a road, the mayor shouldn't just give the job to a friend. We use open platforms where anyone can apply, select the best, and ensure full transparency in awarding public contracts. If we look at the justice system, justice has become digitalized very quickly. By 2016, complaints could be filed online, communications were digitalized, and decisions were publicly accessible. There was the submission of evidence, photos, videos directly for the case files. In France or Europe, you need to bring USB drives and such. It's complicated. Case notifications and tracking are sent directly. Starting in 2020, hearings were held by video conference. We don't need to spend a fortune moving dangerous criminals around. COVID made it work out well, but it had already been planned for a long time. Another healthcare example from 2017. So after a few years of work, they developed, Doctolib, remember? I'm Franco-Belgian living in France. During the COVID vaccine rollout, we were all wondering where to find doses. Someone created Vitemados, a tool to quickly find available vaccination slots online. For them, it was normal. Doctors and prescriptions are digitalized, allowing pharmacies direct access. Everything is planned, organized, connected in a way that's ultra simple, which avoids paperwork. And when they arrive here as refugees and they find out that they get a prescription and then have to send it to Social Security, and it takes 8 months with papers getting lost, they don't understand these things because they're completely gone from their environment. And all of this led to the year 2020 with the DIA app. It's the digitized state in your pocket. That means, first of all, it's the first country where there were e-passports. You don't need to have an identification card or a passport. When there's a police check, you can show your e-passport, which has the same value as the physical passport, with the same security features as those used for banks, etc. You can vote online, you can do a lot of things. All administrative procedures are simple. You can start your business in 10 minutes. There aren't 50 different types, like société par action simplifiée, société à responsabilité limitée, or entreprise unipersonnelle à responsabilité limitée. In the chatbot, you ask, hello, where is the car with this license plate? Where do I pick it up? And it responds. You can also ask how to interpret a law, etc. It's incredibly comprehensive. That was before the war. The war comes, and then obviously they have to speed things up. There's an example for the Ukrainians who arrive here. They discover the French system. I just told you a moment ago. One example that shocked me was when they needed paperwork and were told they were missing various documents. In Ukrainian law, it's forbidden for an administration to ask you for a document that comes from another administration. To get a passport, we have to request a birth certificate extract from the administration, but I never know where. In Ukraine, everything is connected. You don't have to go and request a criminal record extract to get one. Everything is connected. It's absolutely simple. And the Ukrainians, they didn't expect us to be so far behind, and I didn't expect them to be so far ahead when we go there at the moment when the war begins. So they implement it in the artificial intelligence app, but within days, thanks to volunteers who get involved. How do you recruit? Can recruitment open volunteer positions for specific specialties, depending on people's skills, like truck or tank driving? There was fundraising to contribute to the war effort. At the time, they sold stamps. In World War II, they digitized fundraising. With kinds of crowdfunding too, you can donate cryptocurrencies. And that's on an international level. People participated a lot. There's offline mode in the app. It downloads based on your location. It tells you where the nearest shelters are. In winter, since the Russians cut the electricity, where can you get heating? Where can you charge your phone, etc. So there's electricity, heating, or take shelter when there are air raids offline. In your pocket, sue. There is also, as I was saying, digital identification, digital passports. In a war-torn country where a third of the population relocated, in the first months, many people lost their passports and documents. It's now so reliable internationally that the United Nations has promoted it. Even abroad, such as in Poland, e-identification cards are officially recognized. Exactly. So that's something, once again, that contributed to crisis management during the war. Exactly. That's why the DIA app is considered one of the best, recognized by the Times. Like inventions, well, like the most useful and relevant tools in 2014, all of that too, you have to understand that there's a real determination from Ukraine to defend itself, to win, and not to let itself be crushed. And there's a real collaborative aspect in the resistance to the war. DIA. I told you it was a system that was ultra secure, but it also allows you to log into other applications and other tools. So only Ukrainians can have it. For example, there's Ivorog. It's a system, it's a kind of chatbot on Telegram where you have to log in first and you're going to say, I have Russians behind my house. There's a tank that crossed the street. I saw a vehicle passing by. They received hundreds of thousands of geolocated reports with photos, making a real impact. It was released 2 days after the conflict started. So there's an actual military impact. With crowdsourcing capability, information is gathered from the entire population through digital means directly connected to the army. Another example with erythropoietin was also related to DIA. You have a missile flying through the sky, you pull out your phone, you press the button, you designate the target, and then, once it's gone, you say what type of target it was. And then as more and more people do that, that made it possible to have precise geolocation and tracking of these aerial vectors, which increased the interception rate to 85%. Because actually, you have to understand, I spent a lot of time with the people who tried to deal with this. They're in their pickup with a machine gun and either a missile or drone flying at 50 meters high and 800 km/h. If we don't get a warning, by the time we know where it's coming from, it's already too late. But now they have some kind of map, some kind of app called Virage, and it lets them see where the drones are in real time. And when the app showed it was coming from over there, we turned to the right direction. Then there's Zvuk. It was a startup that specialized in recreating the voices of actors, singers, and so on. And then when the war started, since they had an artificial intelligence system for voice recognition, they started working on missile detection. We have our fingerprints, and in the same way, each missile, each drone has a unique sound signature that allows them to be classified. You remember this, Hirohito, World War II. The Japanese, they try to listen, to recognize, and to spot American bombers coming from far away long before they arrive. It's like big ears in the sky. Well, they did the same thing. That is from the cell phones of people who downloaded this app. They would leave it on their windows at night and it would listen. And then, when drones flew by, it allowed us to geolocate them and determine what type of missile was flying over us. And so, it was supported by innovation systems that I'll talk to you about in a moment. There were some minor issues in a few areas. Their story is quite funny. For example, cows, the mooing of cows. It sounded like a certain missile at a specific altitude. Little glitches like this happen occasionally. In the end, they now have 14,000 sensors deployed. And it's an extremely efficient and ultra low-cost equipment compared to our radars, which cost a fortune, need maintenance, and so on. Here we're talking about just putting antennas with microphones on any tree, a relay antenna, and so on. So it's really something that's being massively deployed today and also shows how the Ukrainians have been able to detect drones. Remember, only 19 of the 27 drones that crossed the Polish border 2 weeks ago were detected. We could only intercept 4 despite deploying 3 airborne warning and control systems, 6 fighter jets and more. It's deplorable. The Ukrainians have a 90% interception rate on these low-quality drones, also because they detect them better. Then, still within collective intelligence, there's what we call geointelligence. For example, when you have the Russians showing their results in this photo, there are people, don't ask me how, they spend night after night identifying and finding the exact location. And there are entire websites specialized in identifying and searching for the locations of different events that are going to be geolocated in this way. For example, here's the website called Geoconfirmed. Each of these points you can click on and you can go see the source. You'll receive confirmation each time regarding evidence or destruction, etc. There isn't yet a large amount of artificial intelligence generated disinformation and images. In the future it could happen, but for now our sources have been reliable for years. Units, battalions, fighters who are going to share their results and what they see around them. And for now, it allows us to have sources that are still quite reliable, since these are sources that have been there for several years. There's also everything about crowdfunding. I'm still referring to this collaborative world. Crowdfunding means asking the public to fund projects or actions. So buying protective gear and weapons, etc. And typically this is a photo I took at a gas station, and you see right here, it's money. You can round up when you buy gas. You can round up to the next hryvnia. And actually, it was to fund drones for revenge because the Ukrainians have been getting hit by missiles for months and months. Here, we're talking about the year 2022. And actually, they feel like they don't have any way to get revenge. The Ukrainian population funded the development of a drone to get revenge. The military said, you're nice, but we'll leave you on your own. So they developed a drone called the Beaver. At the end of 2022, the Beaver, when they tested it. Actually, the army didn't believe in it. So that's the Kremlin, and you have a Beaver coming in. And see this explosion? Aperture JG was set to press the next day, but without explosives, it was just a firework that went bang inside. It's a shame, I want to say, but the military saw its effectiveness and said, not bad. They integrated this kamikaze drone into their ecosystem to now add performance. It determines it needs to reach the 8th floor by counting windows. They are able to regain remote control using the Russian telephone network with Russian SIM cards. And that, for example, is over Crimea with destructions that are absolutely gigantic. Compared to the cost of these simple drones, which were originally just a collaborative project by aviation enthusiasts who developed their drones in the evenings and on weekends after university. Like a university project. It's also because it's been their mentality since 2014. Since 2014, they've pursued innovation to help their cousin at war with the Russians. And another example that I really like is Aerorosvitka. It's a volunteer unit that at first just wanted to help their cousin, once again, their friend who had joined the army, and who ended up enlisting in 2015 by developing this drone called the R18. This is the first version they made, the R18, because it has a wingspan of 1.8 meters. It's quite sturdy. 1.8 meters wingspan allowed it to carry 3 to 5 payloads. Anti-tank mines, that's heavy. So they carried 3 to 5. I'm not sure if you remember at the start of the war when the Russians had that long line of vehicles lined up. That was them, they started striking them. At first they dropped things and nothing exploded. Then they tried a light bomb but still saw no explosion. Here, drop that on something that looks light, on a gas tank. And it made an incredible burst, an amazing image, it went totally viral. And so they all started competing to see who could make the best gas tank explosion. And without meaning to, they ended up running a 100-kilometer line of vehicles out of gas, one after another. It wasn't intentional or strategic. These guys enjoyed evenings and weekends with their electric vehicles, quietly flying drones. That's how the Russian army ran out of gas there. This is the small drone at 1.8 meters. There's now a heavier model with a 3.2 meter wingspan. We're discussing about 20,000 euros for a drone. And the efficiency ratio is that for every euro invested in a drone, it destroys 670 euros worth of Russian equipment. 1,670. Imagine the scale they're operating on. And now they have systems with artificial intelligence. They've developed ground drones. It's a company called Intelligence, Surveillance and Reconnaissance Defense, which is highly effective. In this collaborative world, everything still relates to the industry. 4.0, that is basically the digitalization of the industrial world. Using digital tools to identify 3D shapes and produce them in a decentralized way. With hundreds and thousands of volunteers who started producing spare parts for all kinds of things. At the top left, for example, you have periscopes let you stay in your trench and see outside. Top right, the release systems for drones to adapt them to standard drones, to modify them, to have equipment that allows you to properly secure the limbs, and so on. With better repair, better healing. We used grenades and regular systems but had to drop them from higher up, so they added tails. So there's a whole ecosystem that has developed around that. With the possibility for anyone to participate. Today, it works a little less well because the sheer volume means they've switched to more industrial tools. But until the end of 2023, did you use the 3D printers you provided? But tens of thousands of parts crossed the border daily in boxes to go to the different sites that needed them for assembly. And for a ridiculously low cost, it's just a few cents per part. And so that's what allowed them to massively create drones and adaptations for waging war. Another element is everything related to the digitalization of the army. It's something that is very, very striking. Having served in the French army, I'm familiar with C2 and command centers. When you go there, for example, the Combat Vision app, Combat Vision is an app that allows, once again, as I was saying earlier with DIA, you can determine that there are Russians in a certain area. For them, it's at the military level. They will add on site which target is at which location, which element is where. It was originally an app for paintball players. They made it more secure. They also added many features. Use geolocation and augmented reality to define your and your friends' locations. Augmented, that means when I take a view and I take a photo in front of me, this application will tell me there's a target identified behind that hill. This enables highly efficient information sharing for the infantryman and dismounted soldier. At the artillery level, they have a similar system called Kropiva, which also defines who sees the targets and who knows where their comrades are. And here, I'll sum it up for you in one word. It's the Uber of artillery, just like when you call an Uber. It finds you the most suitable vehicle for your needs, depending on where you need to go, and so on. Well, for them, it will tell them which artillery piece is the most suitable for Striker, what I identified based on the situation on the ground and the pieces that can be deployed. These are Ukrainian engineers who actually worked at Uber, who really came back to Ukraine to lend a hand to develop this thing. And then there's the whole dimension. Commercial off-the-shelf stands for commercial off-the-shelf, meaning the use of equipment and systems that are already freely available, open in the open world. Here you see I'm in a headquarters in a neighborhood. Ukrainian. What do you see on the side? Discord. Position transmission is done on Signal. Knowing who does what is done on WhatsApp. Team coordination is on Discord. Getting feedback about whether there are drones around us is on WhatsApp, and video feedback is on Google Meet. Obviously, communication goes through Starlink. When I ask if their thing is secure, they say it's much more secure than your system. Thales at 600 million euros, which only does half of that. How could the Russians get into each of these different branches? If we don't see everything, we understand nothing. Everything would need to be hacked simultaneously. Also, you log into this Google Meet via the artificial intelligence app. That means you need to have a Ukrainian identification card to be able to access this application. Substituting ST. All things about artificial intelligence and generative artificial intelligence like limpid armor, which began before 2022. And I saw it, for example, in Zhytomyr at a training field on a Soviet armored vehicle from the 60s. They installed 4 webcams, synchronized them in the middle. The guy wearing his virtual reality glasses, it was more than just augmented reality. He had a 360-degree view, and the system detected targets outside his field of vision. It detected movement and changes since last time, showing some intelligence. And obviously, they did the same thing with the kamikaze drones, in which they put Raspberry Pi to add artificial intelligence. So here, typically when we get closer to our target, when we approach, there's jamming. So I'm going to lose communication. You saw a little white square on it, which actually means the target has been acquired. My drone will reach the impact site on its own, even if I lose visual and can't control it. You see here, it is effective all the way to impact. That was the first generation. Second generation, we are able to detect which part of the tank is the most vulnerable. I recognize that it's a T-72 tank and not a BMP-3. So you have to hit at that specific spot. Aim for the cannon, since destroying it makes the armored vehicle useless. So they already have 3 generations of artificial intelligence, so that the drone can make a decision based on what's in front of it. It's something that's quite surprising. Well, here it was badly received when it hit the media, is the gamification of war. That is to say, they earn points based on their effectiveness, meaning you have a fighter on the front line. A drone pilot who gets very good results will earn more points. Based on that, his unit can buy equipment. Said that way, it really does sound like a game, except that it means instead of giving 100 kamikaze drones per day to each unit, there are 10,000 per day being used. Well, now we know which unit is using the most, since there are more opponents in front of them, so it helps to allocate resources. When someone in the same unit gets better results, it's clearly because he's better. We're giving him 2 higher level pieces of equipment to make him more effective, or we'll make him a group leader or trainer. And actually this system, which in my opinion isn't well understood here, is extremely virtuous in terms of resource efficiency and identifying the best leaders. And then, unlike what the Russians do to avoid blunders, the Russians are hunting civilians in Kherson. The Ukrainians, as a result, they have control since everything is recorded and everything is reported. This prevents them from intentionally targeting civilians or the wounded. Then there's the Amazon, the soldiers, the front, I assure you. Sometimes I go 5 kilometers further and the soldiers tell me, well, here, it doesn't work the same way, just 5 kilometers away. Electronic warfare is different on the other side. And in a traditional army, it's very hierarchical. Such and such brigade will be equipped with this or that equipment, etc. Here, decision-making is very decentralized. Everyone can choose the system that best suits their needs, as seen with applications and equipment orders. In my zone, I need this from this category, which will be the most effective. For this armored vehicle, explosive and electronic warfare type, you need this jamming. Well, that's really at the lowest level that they're able to make these decisions. And they're delivered by regular mail, incidentally. The Ukrainian Postal Service, the Ukrainian SSF, it's unbelievable. You know, there's a saying in French where we often say military administration is to administration what military music is to music, what military medicine is to medicine. In short, Ukraine is working to set up a military postal service. They use long-established digital systems with extremely high efficiency. Digitization also plays a role in Reconstruction. with, for example, the implementation and use of a lot of information technology resources, especially virtual reality and augmented reality, which will be used in peacekeeping, communication, documenting war crimes, and allowing people to revisit areas without traumatized individuals having to retell what they experienced, and so on. So there is real work being done to integrate information technology and all its aspects in order to actually work in the field and also to preserve the memory of what has been destroyed. And so when you have certain areas, for example in Bucha or Irpin, when you go there, you can download an app and see how it looked before it was destroyed. It's also interesting to see the before and after, similar to viewing castles here. But over there, they've really integrated it so they can track how the situation is evolving. And we're also talking about health. You know, there are a huge number of wounded. There are several 100,000 wounded. We're approaching 50,000 to 80,000 amputees in Ukraine. And you have, for example, what we call phantom pain. Phantom pain is when you no longer have an arm, but you still feel pain in your hand, which can't be treated because it's nerves, etc. And actually having virtual reality glasses, augmented reality in this case shows your arm in the image, as seen in the photo here. Well, these pains gradually disappear. Studies validated in many countries are also being used in Ukraine to help people return to normal civilian life. So, making disappear phantom pain through augmented reality. Here, it's for post-traumatic stress disorder, for those who've experienced extremely difficult events. Well, there's virtual reality in this case, which also allows for good feedback. It's been used in the United States since Iraq, but Ukrainians have widely adopted it from the start. Also for economic reasons, as they have hundreds of thousands of wounded, civilian, military, psychological and physical, and they can't do it the old-fashioned way. There aren't enough psychologists, etc. So they really have these methods that work very, very well and that they've integrated on a massive scale. One last little point about how they've structured innovation, and I like it because it looks a little bit like Odoo. You have Brave One. Brave One is the innovation hub, a bit like the defense innovation lab we have in France or in many countries. But I don't want to criticize what's happening in other countries, but they didn't have a choice. They got straight to the point quickly, with great efficiency, with a classification that was already very clear from the start. These are our needs. We need robotics, drones, electronic warfare, artificial intelligence in the field of drones, robots, demining and so on. What's good is that it allows for a very relevant classification and we can see who goes where. Your project fits here. Do you have a better chance? Your projects seem complementary. Could we use that? It helps guide and identify the best ideas and gems. And for costs that are ridiculous, to have results that are very relevant, already through networking, through organizing the meeting, through connecting people, through the use of collaborative tools. Of 1,450 proposed developments, these stats are over a year and a half old. They found 807 of military interest. There are 700 Brave One patent recipients due to duplicates and other reasons. Only 3 million euros funded 177 of them. In France, for that, we have a PowerPoint. For that price, it's very, very advanced compared to anything else we can do in the field. A phrase that stuck with me and I've heard often is, no time for bullshit. The Ukrainians, they don't have time to wait for us to make them dream. With PowerPoints for something that won't work in 6 months and making calls for tenders, etc., it doesn't work. Here, when we make a statement of requirements, I'll give you a concrete example. When I was observing situations in 2022, the army, our Belgian and French armies, we identify this need. We know exactly where we need to go. So we adapt our doctrine, and then, once the doctrine has evolved, we can make a statement of requirements for the industry. The industry will respond in 6 months, and then we'll test what they've proposed, and then we'll validate it, industrialize it, and start producing. Unfortunately, in 2025, we're still making drones designed for the 2022 war. We're 3 years behind because of our incredible administrative processes. And actually, when I talk about it with administrators and say that decision making is too slow, etc., they tell me, you don't understand. It's the administration. We can't change it. It's the rules. I say, but come with me to the trenches. I'm sure you'll find a way to move faster. That's it. And when I see here how much Odoo accelerates innovation, how it opens doors, it has 250,000 people who found jobs through a collaborative platform. It almost sounds like Ukraine to me. And before coming here, I didn't realize the scale of what Odoo is and how many people can benefit from this platform. Well, Ukraine gives the impression that it's a country that understood what you understood with Odoo. So I just hope that many other countries will follow this good example, that you create lots of jobs and that we support Ukrainians properly. Thank you all.